The cold metal walls of the Salvoran palace cell hummed softly, a reminder of the advanced technology surrounding Daniel Cole. He sat on the hard bench, his wrists bound in glowing energy cuffs, but his mind was sharp. He wasn't dead yet. That meant he still had a chance. Daniel had been sent as a diplomat, not a prisoner. The Terran Defense Fleet had hoped for peace talks with the Salvorans, a powerful alien empire that controlled dozens of worlds. But the moment he stepped onto their grand space station, everything went wrong. The Salvorans did not come to negotiate. They came to capture. His team was slaughtered, and he was taken alive, the only human in a place where he was considered weak. The heavy doors slid open with a hiss. A tall figure stepped inside, her presence commanding. She was unlike any alien Daniel had seen before, taller than a human, with silver skin that shimmered under the light. Her eyes, glowing gold, studied him with curiosity and a hint of disdain. She wore an elegant black and gold robe, marking her as someone important. Daniel recognized her immediately, Princess Avaris, the heir to the Salvoran Empire. "You are the human they captured," she said, her voice smooth but filled with authority. Daniel smirked, leaning back against the cold wall. "I guess that makes me special." Avaris frowned. "Special? No. Unusual? Perhaps. My people do not see humans as equals. You are. Lesser." Daniel chuckled. "That's funny. Last I checked, we were giving your fleets a hard time out there." Avaris narrowed her eyes. "Only because humans fight without honor. You use deception. Trickery. You are unpredictable. That's called strategy, Princess." She studied him, her gaze intense. She had expected him to cower, to beg, or to show fear. But instead, this human was bold. He spoke as if they were equals, as if he was not a prisoner awaiting execution. "The Emperor has decided your fate," she said finally. "You will be executed at sunrise." Daniel's smirk didn't fade. He had expected that answer. The Salvorans were a warrior race. To them, weakness was an offense, and he was the weakest thing in their eyes, a human alone in their empire. But he wasn't dead yet. "So, why send a princess to deliver the bad news?" he asked. "Doesn't the Emperor have people for that?" Avaris hesitated, just for a second. "I was curious." "About what?" She lifted her chin slightly. "About why humans fight so fiercely when they know they will lose." Daniel chuckled. "Maybe we just don't like being told what to do." For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the energy cuffs filled the silence. Then suddenly, Avaris turned and walked toward the door. But before she left, she said, "You should not smile, human. By tomorrow, you will be dead." Daniel leaned back again, watching as the doors shut behind her. "Not if I can help it." Daniel Cole sat in the cold prison cell, his hand still bound by glowing energy cuffs. The words of Princess Avaris echoed in his mind. "By tomorrow, you will be dead." He had heard many threats before, but this one was real. The Salvorans were not known for mercy. They saw him as nothing more than a weak human, a prisoner who had no right to stand in their empire. But Daniel was not the kind of man to accept death so easily. The sound of footsteps outside caught his attention. The heavy metal doors slid open again. And once more, Princess Avaris stepped inside. This time, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood two Salvoran guards, their tall frames covered in dark armor, their glowing red eyes fixed on Daniel like hunters watching their prey. Avaris crossed her arms. "It is time." The guard stepped forward, grabbing Daniel by the arms and forcing him to stand. He didn't resist. Fighting here would be pointless. He needed to wait for the right moment. They led him through the grand halls of the palace, where golden walls reflected the light of floating lanterns. The Salvoran nobles stood on raised platforms, watching him with disgust. To them, he was an insect, unworthy of even walking in their presence. At last, they entered the throne room. The chamber was massive, with pillars stretching high into the ceiling. At the far end, seated on an enormous throne made of dark metal, was Emperor Vorkar, ruler of the Salvoran Empire. His silver skin shimmered under the light, his golden eyes burning with power. Around him, Salvoran generals and high-ranking nobles stood in silence, waiting for the moment of judgment. Daniel was forced to his knees before the emperor. Averis stepped forward, bowing her head slightly. "My emperor," she said, "the human stands before you." Vorkar's deep voice echoed through the chamber. "You are bold to speak, princess. This creature is beneath us. His fate is already decided." Averis hesitated. "There may be another way." The room fell silent. Vorkar's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Averis took a deep breath before speaking. "Our laws are clear. A warrior may claim protection through royal bond. If he is chosen, he cannot be executed." The nobles gasped in shock. Murmurs spread through the room like wildfire. Daniel frowned. Where is she going with this? Vorkar's gaze darkened. "You speak of an ancient tradition, one used only in the rarest of cases. Are you suggesting that this human could be worthy?" Averis lifted her chin. "I am suggesting that we test him." Daniel finally understood. She's trying to give me a chance. The Emperor's expression remained unreadable for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "Very well. If this human wishes to live, he must prove he is worthy." Vorkar stood, his powerful presence filling the room. "He will face the trials of the worthy. If he survives, he may earn his life." The nobles murmured again. No human had ever taken the trials before. It was a death sentence disguised as a challenge. Daniel smirked. "I like my odds." Averis turned to him, her golden eyes filled with something he couldn't quite read. "You should not be so confident. The trials are brutal. Many Salvorans have died in them." Daniel shrugged. "Then I guess I just have to be better than them." Averis stared at him for a moment before shaking her head. "You are reckless." He grinned. "And yet, I'm still here." Vorkar's voice cut through their exchange. "Very well. The trials begin at sunrise. If he fails, he dies." The guards pulled Daniel to his feet and dragged him back toward the prison. As they left, he stole one last glance at Averis. She was still staring at him, her expression unreadable. Did she actually want him to survive? As the doors closed behind him, Daniel took a deep breath. He had been given a chance, a slim one, but a chance nonetheless. Now he just had to do what humans did best: survive. The sun of Zalvor rose over the towering palace, casting long shadows across the great arena. The air was thick with tension as nobles and warriors gathered in the stands, their glowing eyes fixed on the human standing in the center. Daniel Cole rolled his shoulders, feeling the weight of 1,000 stares. The trials of the worthy were about to begin, and everyone expected him to fail. He was a human, a fragile creature in the eyes of the Salvorans, but he had no intention of dying today. Above him, on a high platform, Emperor Vorkar sat on his throne, his piercing gaze filled with amusement. Beside him stood Princess Averis, her expression carefully neutral. Daniel met her eyes for a brief second. Was she hoping he would survive, or just curious to see him fail? A deep voice boomed across the arena. The first trial begins. A massive Zalvoran warrior stepped forward, his silver skin gleaming under the sun. He was at least 7 feet tall, his muscles thick like steel. He carried a long plasma staff, its edges glowing with deadly energy. "The trial of strength," a noble announced. "The human must prove he is not weak. If he falls, he dies." Daniel exhaled slowly. He had no advanced weapons, no armor, only his instincts. The Exalvoran warrior smirked, clearly underestimating him. Then the battle began. The warrior lunged forward, swinging the plasma staff in a wide arc. Daniel ducked just in time, feeling the heat pass inches from his face. He rolled to the side, searching for an opening. The Excelvoran was strong, too strong. Daniel couldn't match him in raw power. He had to be faster, smarter. The warrior charged again, thrusting the staff toward Daniel's chest. This time, Daniel didn't dodge. Instead, he sidestepped at the last second, grabbing the warrior's wrist and twisting it hard. The sudden move caught the alien off guard, and for a brief moment, he lost balance. That was all Daniel needed. With a swift kick to the warrior's knee, Daniel sent him stumbling. In the same motion, he seized the plasma staff from his grip and spun it around. Before the warrior could react, Daniel slammed the blunt end of the staff into his stomach. The Excelvoran gasped in shock, then collapsed to the ground, defeated. Silence filled the arena. Then, a wave of murmurs spread among the crowd. A human, a mere human, had bested a Excelvoran warrior in combat. On the royal platform, Emperor Vorkar's expression darkened, but Everes's eyes held a flicker of something else. Was it admiration? Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow and smirked. Is that all you've got? The nobles hissed in anger, but the trial master simply nodded. The human has passed the trial of strength. We move to the next test. A massive stone door slid open, revealing a dark tunnel. The trial of mind begins. Daniel glanced at Everes. For the first time, she looked concerned. What's in there? He asked. She hesitated, then replied, something worse than a warrior. Daniel sighed. Great. With no other choice, he stepped into the darkness, ready for whatever came next. Daniel stepped into the dark tunnel, the heavy stone doors sliding shut behind him. The roar of the crowd outside faded, leaving only silence. His heartbeat echoed in his ears as his eyes adjusted to the dim glow of strange markings on the walls. The trial of mind. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew one thing. This was not about physical strength. The Excelvorans wanted to test something else. His intelligence, his willpower, his ability to survive without brute force. A voice echoed through the chamber, deep and ancient. The mind is the greatest weapon. If you cannot use it, you are unworthy. Suddenly, the ground beneath him shifted. The walls flickered, and before his eyes, the tunnel changed. He was no longer in a dark corridor. Instead, he stood in the middle of a vast, open desert. The sun above burned hot, and the air shimmered with heat. An illusion. A test. He wasn't sure. Then, a voice whispered in his ear, though no one was there. You are alone. You will never escape. You will die here. Daniel frowned. This was some kind of mental trap. A test to see if he would break under pressure. The heat felt real. The thirst creeping into his throat, but he knew none of this could truly harm him, unless he let it. He took a deep breath. Stay calm. Think. The desert wasn't real. That meant the solution wasn't physical. It was mental. He closed his eyes and focused. If this is an illusion, I can break it. The whispers grew louder, trying to shake his confidence. Visions appeared around him. His past failures, his team being slaughtered by Excelvoran warriors, his own death. But Daniel clenched his fists. No, this isn't real. He focused on one truth, himself. He was Daniel Cole, a Terran officer, a survivor. The desert, the voices, the fear, they were all lies. The moment he accepted this, the world shattered like glass. The desert disappeared. The voices stopped. He was back in the tunnel, standing exactly where he had been before. But now, the markings on the walls glowed brighter, as if acknowledging his success. A door ahead of him slid open. The human has passed the trial of mind, the same deep voice announced. Daniel let out a breath. Well, that was fun. He stepped forward, entering the next chamber, but he wasn't given a moment to rest. The voice spoke again. Final trial. Trial of spirit. A second door opened, revealing something that made Daniel's smirk fade. Princess Avaris stood in the center of the room, her expression unreadable, and in her hand was a blade. The voice continued, "To prove his worth, the human must make a choice. Fight or surrender." Daniel frowned. "Wait, what?" Avaris finally spoke. "The trial of spirit is not about battle. It is about your true nature." She stepped closer, holding out the blade. "Will you take this weapon and fight me, proving you have the spirit of a warrior? Or will you refuse, proving you are weak?" Daniel stared at the blade. He knew there had to be a trick here. He looked into Avaris's golden eyes. There was something in them, a silent message, a test of spirit. Daniel smirked, then took a step back. He didn't need the blade. "I don't have to prove anything," he said. "You already know who I am." For a moment, there was silence. Then, Avaris smiled, just slightly. "The human has passed the trial of spirit." The chamber doors opened. The trials were over. Daniel had won. The grand arena of the Salvoran Empire had never been so silent. Thousands of glowing eyes watched in stunned disbelief as Daniel Cole stood victorious. He had done the impossible. A mere human, a species considered weak, unworthy, lesser, had passed the trials of the worthy. He had bested a Zalvoran warrior in combat, resisted the illusions of the trial of mind, and made the right choice in the trial of spirit. And now he stood in the center of the arena, looking straight at Emperor Vorkar himself. High above on the royal platform, the Emperor's golden eyes were filled with something close to amusement, but also calculation. The nobles around him whispered among themselves, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. And standing beside the Emperor, Princess Avaris felt something she could not explain. She had thought Daniel would fail. He should have failed. But now, as he stood tall, shoulders squared, his confident smirk never fading, she realized something. Humans were different. They were not the strongest. They did not have the advanced technology of the Talvoran. They did not have the centuries of war history that her people prided themselves on. But they had something else, something dangerous. Willpower. Daniel did not win because he was stronger. He won because he refused to lose. Avaris had seen many warriors fight. She had seen the most brutal and ruthless of her kind in battle, but none of them fought like Daniel. He adapted. He found openings. He refused to let fear control him. And now he stood before the Emperor, awaiting his fate. Vorkar finally spoke, his deep voice echoing across the arena. "The human has passed the trials," he said, his tone unreadable. "The law is clear." There was a long pause. "By right of conquest, he has earned protection through royal bond." The words sent shockwaves through the crowd. The nobles gasped in outrage. The warriors clenched their fists. And Daniel just raised an eyebrow. "So, what does that mean exactly?" he asked. Vorkar's eyes narrowed. "It means you will not be executed." Daniel grinned. "Well, that's a relief." But then, Vorkar's expression darkened. "However, the bond must be completed." Daniel frowned. "What bond?" Avaris felt her body stiffen as the Emperor turned his gaze toward her. "The human has claimed victory through the ancient trials. According to our laws, a warrior who succeeds is granted a place among the royal bloodline." A heavy silence followed. And then, Vorkar spoke the words that shook Avaris to her core. He must take Princess Avaris as his wife. The entire arena erupted into chaos. Nobles shouted in protest. Warriors growled in fury. The idea of a human becoming part of the royal family was unthinkable. Avaris felt her heart pound in her chest. She turned to her father, her voice sharp. "This is madness." Vorkar's eyes gleamed. "It is the law." Avaris clenched her fists. "You cannot expect me to marry a human." Daniel, standing below, blinked in surprise. "Wait, what?" Avaris glared at him. "Do not act shocked. You knew what you were doing." Daniel raised his hands. Whoa, hold on, princess. I came here expecting to die, not get a marriage proposal. Avaris turned back to her father, trying to control her emotions. Father, this is foolishness. The people will never accept it. Vorkar leaned forward, his expression cold. And if you refuse, princess, then you defy the will of the empire. The weight of those words settled on Avaris like a heavy chain. She had never defied her father before. She had always followed her duty, always obeyed the laws. But this was unthinkable. She looked down at Daniel. He was watching her carefully, his blue eyes filled with something she could not place. Amusement, curiosity, or something else. Daniel let out a slow breath and scratched the back of his head. Well, I guess I should at least say this first. Avaris frowned. Say what? Daniel smirked. Princess, will you marry me? Avaris stared in shock. The entire arena held its breath. And for the first time in her life, she had no idea what to say. Avaris couldn't believe what was happening. The entire arena had fallen into stunned silence, all eyes fixed on her and the humans standing below. Daniel stood there, arms crossed, his smirk never fading. So, princess, what do you say? Avaris clenched her fists. This fool was enjoying this. She turned sharply to her father, Emperor Vorkar, her golden eyes burning with frustration. This is ridiculous. You cannot seriously expect me to marry a human. Vorkar leaned back in his throne, his expression unreadable. The law is absolute. The trials were meant to weed out the unworthy. Yet, he stands victorious. Avaris gritted her teeth. He is not one of us. The emperor's voice remained calm. And yet, he has proved himself. She looked back down at Daniel. He was watching her with an amused expression, but she could tell he was studying her reaction carefully. This was a game to him. Avaris exhaled sharply, trying to think. She was a princess of the Salvoran Empire. She was not some prize to be handed over because of an ancient law. But at the same time, defying her father in front of the entire empire would be dangerous. There had to be another way. Her mind worked quickly. The law stated that if a warrior passed the trials, he earned royal protection through bonding. That was usually interpreted as marriage, but not always. Avaris turned to her father. The law states that a royal bond must be formed. It does not say it must be immediate. The nobles gasped at her words. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Oh, what are you suggesting, princess? Avaris ignored him and continued. This human is an outsider. The people will never accept him as my husband. She turned to her father. But if he wishes to claim his place, let him prove his worth further. The emperor stroked his chin, clearly intrigued. You wish to delay the bond? Avaris nodded. Yes. If the human wishes to stand beside royalty, let him earn the trust of the empire first. Daniel let out a short laugh. Wait, let me get this straight. I just survived all your death trials, and now you're saying I need to do more. Avaris smirked. You are not afraid, are you, human? Daniel grinned. Afraid? No. Annoyed? Maybe. The emperor considered this for a long moment before finally nodding. Very well. The bond will be delayed. But understand this, Avaris, if he fails, he will be banished or executed. Avaris inclined her head. Understood. Daniel rolled his shoulders. Great. More chances to not die. Love it. The emperor stood from his throne, and the crowd immediately fell silent. Then it is decided. The human will be placed under the protection of the royal family and given time to prove himself. He turned his gaze to Daniel. You walk a dangerous path, human. If you survive, you may earn a place in the empire. If you fail, you will not live to regret it. Daniel gave a mock salute. I'll do my best, Your Majesty. Vorkar's eyes narrowed before he turned and left the arena. The nobles and warriors slowly followed, their murmurs filling the air. Avaris let out a quiet breath. For now, she had bought time. But as she turned to leave, she realized Daniel was still looking at her with that same annoying smirk. "What?" she snapped. Daniel shrugged. "You could have just said yes, princess. I promise I'm not that bad." Avaris rolled her eyes. "You are infuriating." Daniel grinned. "And yet you just saved my life. That means you care." Avaris narrowed her eyes. "I did not do it for you. I did it for the Empire." Daniel chuckled. "Whatever helps you sleep at night." Avaris turned away, trying to ignore the strange warmth rising in her chest. This human was dangerous, but not in the way she had expected. The golden halls of the Talvoran royal palace were nothing like Daniel had ever seen. Towering pillars stretched toward the high ceilings, glowing crystals embedded in the walls casting an eerie but beautiful light. The architecture was alien, yet elegant, designed for a race far stronger and larger than him. Daniel walked through the corridors, his boots echoing against the polished floor. 2 Salvoran guards followed closely behind, their expressions blank, but their hands never too far from their weapons. It was clear they didn't trust him. Not that he blamed them. He was the first human to ever step inside this palace alive. As they reached the end of the hall, the large doors ahead of him slid open with a low hum. Inside was Princess Avaris. She stood near a massive circular table covered in holographic displays, her arms crossed as she studied him. Her golden eyes still held that same mixture of curiosity and annoyance. "You're late," she said. Daniel smirked. "Didn't know we had an appointment." Avaris motioned for him to step forward. "You wanted a chance to prove yourself. This is it." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly am I proving?" Avaris tapped the holographic display, and a 3-dimensional map of a city appeared. "This is Kaler, one of the Empire's border settlements," she explained. "Recently, we've lost contact with it. No distress signals, no messages. It's as if the entire colony has vanished." Daniel studied the map. "And you think something attacked them?" Avaris nodded. "That's what we need to find out. You will be part of the investigation team." Daniel leaned back. "So let me get this straight. You're sending me, a human who just got here, on a mission to a mysteriously vanished city." Avaris smirked. "You wanted to prove yourself, didn't you?" Daniel exhaled. "Yeah, but I was thinking more along the lines of a job with less chance of dying." Avaris walked around the table, standing directly in front of him. "You think survival makes you worthy of being in this palace? That just because you passed the trials, you belong here?" Daniel met her gaze, unflinching. "The Exalvoran Empire does not care about words," she continued. "It cares about actions." Daniel sighed. All right. I get it. You're testing me again." Avaris gave a small, satisfied smile. "Good. Then you leave at dawn." Daniel scratched the back of his head. "So I assume I'll have a team with me." Avaris nodded and turned to the door. "Follow me." The team. Daniel was led to the royal hangar, where 3 figures stood waiting for him near a sleek, dark Xalvoran shuttle. Avaris gestured toward them. "These are your team members." The first was a towering Xalvoran warrior, his silver skin marked with deep battle scars. His piercing eyes regarded Daniel with clear disapproval. "This is Korzus," Avaris introduced, "one of the finest warriors in the Empire." Korzus grunted. "I do not trust you, human, but I will ensure you do not fail this mission." Daniel smirked. "Nice to meet you too, big guy." The second was a slender female Talvoran, her violet eyes sharp and calculating. "Ceres," Avaris said, "our intelligence officer. She specializes in strategy and analysis." Ceres tilted her head slightly. "A human on an imperial mission. How interesting." Daniel chuckled. "Glad someone thinks so." Finally, his eyes fell on the third figure, a human. Daniel's eyebrows raised in surprise. "Wait, another human." The man stepped forward, his expression serious. "Name's Reed Carter, former Earth Alliance soldier." Daniel grinned. Never thought I'd see another Terran here. Reed nodded. You're not the only human who's found themselves in the middle of Zalvoran business. Daniel turned to Avaris. All right. So when do we leave? Avaris gestured toward the ship. Right now. Daniel took a deep breath. This was it. His first real step into the unknown. As the team boarded the shuttle, he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was waiting for them in Kaler, it wasn't friendly. The shuttle descended through thick gray clouds, the engines humming softly as the abandoned city of Kaler came into view. From above, the settlement looked lifeless. No lights, no movement, no signs of battle. It was as if the entire population had simply vanished. Inside the shuttle, Daniel adjusted the straps on his gear. Across from him, Korzis sharpened his blade, his expression cold and focused. Saris tapped at her wrist device, scanning for any signals, while Reed Carter, the only other human on the team, checked his rifle. Daniel turned to Princess Avaris, who stood near the control panel, watching the city with narrowed eyes. You sure we shouldn't be bringing a bigger team? Daniel asked. You know, just in case an army of invisible monsters is waiting for us. Avaris shot him a glance. If you are afraid, human, you may stay behind. Daniel smirked. Oh, I'd love to. But I don't think your father would like that. Reed chuckled. Welcome to Xalvoran missions, Cole. No backup. No easy exits. The shuttle touched down in the center of the city with a hiss of steam. The doors slid open, revealing the eerie silence of Kaler. The streets were empty. Buildings stood intact, but there was no movement. No bodies. No signs of struggle. Just a ghost town. Saris activated her scanner. No life signs detected. Korzis grunted. This is unnatural. Avaris stepped forward. Stay alert. If something happened here, we need to find out what. The investigation. The team moved cautiously through the streets, weapons drawn. The air was heavy, thick with an unexplainable stillness. Daniel peered into a nearby shop. Food still sat on tables, untouched. A cup had been left on the counter, as if someone had planned to return. But no one ever did. This is creepy, he muttered. Avaris inspected a control panel on the wall, pressing a few buttons. The power grid is still operational, but there's no activity in the system logs for the past 3 days. Reed knelt by a small pile of discarded belongings. It's like they all just walked away. Saris frowned. Or something took them. Korzis tightened his grip on his weapon. Then where are the bodies? The thought made Daniel's skin crawl. If something attacked the colony, there should be signs of a fight. Blood, damage, weapons left behind. But there was nothing. It was as if the entire population had been erased. Then, suddenly, a sound. A faint clicking noise echoed from one of the alleyways. The team froze. Daniel exchanged glances with Reed. They were not alone. Avaris motioned for silence and gestured toward the alley. Korzis took the lead, stepping forward with his massive blade raised. The others followed closely. The clicking noise grew louder. As they turned the corner, they saw movement. A shadow darted across the alley. Korzis rushed forward, only to find a small, trembling figure. A Xalvoran child. The girl looked up at them with wide, terrified eyes. Avaris stepped forward, lowering her weapon. It's all right. We won't hurt you. The child hesitated, then whispered something so softly that only Daniel, standing close, could hear. They're still here. Daniel's stomach dropped. Who? He asked. The girl's hands shook. The ones who took everyone. The team barely had time to react before a sudden, deep growl echoed through the city. A terrible chill filled the air. And from the shadows, something moved. A deep growl echoed through the empty city streets. Daniel's fingers tightened around his weapon. His heart pounded as his eyes scanned the shadows between the buildings. Something was there. The little Xalvoran girl clung to Avaris, her small body trembling. They're still here, she had whispered. And then, a sound. Not just one. Many. A clicking, chittering noise that sent a shiver down Daniel's spine. Reed raised his rifle. "We've got company." Avaris drew her blade. "Form up." Corzis stepped forward, his massive sword gleaming. His golden eyes scanned the darkness. "Show yourselves." For a moment, silence. Then, from the ruined buildings and dark alleyways, they came. Tall, insect-like creatures with sharp, elongated limbs. Their black exoskeletons shimmered under the dim city lights. Their many eyes glowed with a sickly green hue, watching, waiting. Daniel's throat went dry. What the hell are those? Sirius's scanner flashed red. Unknown life form. High energy readings. This is bad. One of the creatures let out a high-pitched screech, and suddenly, they attacked. The battle for Kaler. The first creature lunged. Corzis moved first, his blade slicing through its exoskeleton. The creature shrieked as dark green blood sprayed across the pavement. Reed opened fire, his plasma round striking another one in the chest. The alien staggered, but kept moving. Daniel dodged as a clawed limb slashed toward him, barely missing his face. He rolled backward and fired his weapon at point-blank range. The blast hit the creature's head, blowing it apart. Avaris moved like a storm, her golden blade cutting down two creatures in quick succession. "Stay together. Protect the child." Sirius fired her energy pistol, her usual calm replaced by urgency. "They're surrounding us." The creatures were fast. They moved in eerie, unnatural ways, crawling along walls, leaping across rooftops. Their chittering voices filled the air like a terrible whisper. Daniel's mind raced. These things didn't fight like mindless beasts. They were coordinated, as if they were hunting. It was twice the size of the others, its body covered in thick armor-like plating. Its many eyes glowed brighter, and its long, bladed arms dripped with venom. Sirius's scanner beeped rapidly. "That one's different. It's a leader." Avaris gritted her teeth. "Then we take it down first." Daniel cracked his knuckles. "I was hoping you'd say that." Taking down the Alpha. The Alpha creature let out a roar, and the smaller ones backed away. It was challenging them. Corzis charged first, his sword flashing. He struck at the Alpha's chest, but the blade barely made a scratch. The creature's clawed hand struck back, sending Corzis flying into a wall. Reed cursed. "That thing's tough." Avaris dodged as the Alpha swung at her. She slashed at its legs, but the creature was fast, moving with inhuman precision. Daniel watched, analyzing. His mind worked quickly. There had to be a weakness. Then he saw it. Each time the Alpha moved, its underbelly was exposed for just a moment. A blind spot. "Reed, aim for the joints," Daniel shouted. Reed nodded and fired, his plasma shots hitting the Alpha's leg joints. The creature stumbled. Avaris saw the opening and rushed in, slashing its exposed belly. Dark green blood spilled onto the ground. The creature let out a horrible screech. Daniel didn't waste the moment. He ran forward, grabbed a fallen plasma grenade from the ground, and leaped onto the Alpha's back. The creature thrashed, trying to throw him off. Daniel gritted his teeth, gripping tight. "Not today, buddy." He slammed the grenade into a weak spot between its armor plates, then jumped away. Boom! The explosion tore through the Alpha's back. The creature screeched in agony, its body convulsing, then collapsed. For a moment, silence. Then the remaining creatures turned and fled, disappearing into the shadows. The battle was over. Aftermath. The team stood among the wreckage, catching their breath. The little girl peeked from behind Avaris, her eyes still full of fear. Are they gone? Avaris sheathed her blade. For now. Sirius scanned the Alpha's body. This species. I've never seen anything like it. Reed wiped sweat from his brow. Something tells me we haven't seen the last of them. Daniel exhaled. Great. More alien monsters. Just what I needed. Avaris turned to him, studying him for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smirked. "You fought well, human." Daniel grinned. "I try." Corzes, still holding his injured side, grunted. "Perhaps you are not as weak as I thought." Daniel raised an eyebrow. Was that a compliment? Corzes simply walked away. Averist chuckled. "Come. We must report back to the Emperor. This is only the beginning." Daniel looked around at the ruined city, at the bodies of the strange creatures. Something told him she was right. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The end.